And welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King. Welcome back to the Week 2 edition of the Roundtable, joined here with Jason Caldwell and Phillip Marshall as Auburn gets set for their home opener on Saturday night, 6:30. Nice primetime spot for this team. Not necessarily a primetime opponent, Jason, as we were just talking about before we got rolling. Got to come out and play well. Got to come out and execute against everybody on your schedule. But this is definitely a tune-up opportunity, the definition of it, because Ball State is not expected to be a very good football team this season. New coaching staff, tons of new players, and should be an opportunity for Auburn to iron out some wrinkles on Saturday night. We think.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about it before. This is where you learn the maturity of a team. You got a bunch of young guys on this team, but can you go take care of business? I mean, it's week 2. You know, if you have one of these games, sometimes it might happen late in the year. There's no reason for one to happen in week 2 of a season. So for Auburn, just take care of business. And this has been a week to work on yourself because, you know, this is one where you go execute, then you're going to win the football game if you're Auburn. How well can you do those things on Saturday at home, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future? If you truly are 1-0 team, and that's kind of the mantra, if you're a 1-0 team, then you need to act like it on Saturday night.
Yeah, and Phillip, you wrote about it this week. You asked Hugh Freeze about it. This week at his press conference, he said you shouldn't have to talk to your team about this kind of a game. If you've got the right, stuff, you got the right leadership, and like Jason said, if you're solely focused on having a winning season every single week, going 1-0 every week, shouldn't have to worry about a game like this. Of course, that's easier said than done. When you got to go execute for 4 quarters. But I thought Hugh Freeze put it really well this week, saying, look, if Auburn's going to be an improved football team this season, then they don't have to talk about games like this. They just go out and treat it like every other week of practice.
Yeah, and Jason too, for sure, if you've been around longer. I've seen Auburn struggle in games something like this. Now, to be honest with you, my thought is, not having watched a second of Ball State, is that this is not the kind of team that have caused problems. I mean, for instance, this team is no comparison to the New Mexico State team from 2 years ago. I mean, there's just no comparison there. And plus, it's the home opener. Going to have a big crowd, a lot of excitement, and they should be excited to play. And I'll be surprised if they don't throw the ball around a good bit, at least early. I think Hughes got all those pin-up pass plays that he didn't call. He didn't call against Baylor that he's ready to call. So. But the main thing is, like I said, execution. And to be fair, executing is not the same challenge against Ball State as it is against a Power 4 team. But, doing what you're supposed to do, being where you're supposed to do, doing it full speed, all those things. And I think that's what is important out of a game like this. And hopefully, you would hope, into the second half, maybe get some guys who haven't played much, particularly quarterbacks, some reps.
Jason, you had a preview on our site this week looking at Ball State. Interesting team because of the coaching staff that comes over. Really interesting quarterback, guy who was a quarterback for them, then was a wide receiver, and is now a quarterback again. I thought it was, kind of telling, Hugh Freeze on Tiger Talk. And look, we're talking about this game, no disrespect to Ball State, but it's like 42.5 point favorite for a reason. Auburn is. Hugh Freeze was talking about them, and instead of noting things that they do well on both sides of the ball, he kind of just ran through their personalities. Like, they'll be 4 down on defense, and they'll do interesting stuff on offense. That was kind of his way of skirting around the fact that this is not a very good football team. But tell us a little bit about what to expect from them, Jason, on both sides of the ball on Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you look at their first game, and it was completely kind of total opposites of what they do. in terms of how the numbers stacked up. They ran it okay. Not surprisingly, a former athletic quarterback that was moved to defensive back last season to start the year and became kind of a jack of all trades offensive guy. They didn't throw it a bunch. Didn't have a lot of success. It's almost kind of a maybe Nick Marshall 2013 style thing where you got a guy that can throw it some. And Nick was a guy that wound up being a really good passer in 14, but they didn't throw it. They didn't have to throw it a ton in 13, but it's going to be zone read, getting the shotgun, run the football. They got a couple of receivers that have been potential guys. This is a team with a ton of transfers. The second week in a row, a lot of old guys. They got 25 players who are out of eligibility after this season. That's a bunch of older players. Most of those guys are transfers. Most of those guys are transfers from Purdue and other places where they didn't get to play a bunch. So they're going to like, hey, well, I want to go play my last year. So that's what you see with this team. But offensively, got a big physical receiver who's been hurt much of his career, but is a guy that people thought he was going to be a player. Running back transfer from Kennesaw State's pretty good player. Quarterback, really athletic. Defensively, not a ton of size up front, and I think it's a group that it's probably going to play opposite of what Auburn saw last week because they just don't have much size and they don't have a whole lot of depth. I think they're going to have to try to do something to take away the run. Last week, they did a pretty good job of that against Purdue. Gave up, 340 yards passing in the process and 31 points. I think a team like Ball State, Baylor even chose to do it. You have to pick your poison. Like, okay, how do you have to play this? If you're Ball State and you play it soft, then Auburn will have 500 yards rushing. That's the difference in this one. So you almost always lean towards a team like this playing from front to back, going, we got to do everything we can to not let them run the football. So I think for Auburn's perspective, you're going to have the opportunity to throw some balls down the field. And watching some of that Purdue game, they didn't do a whole lot on offense and still had some guys pretty wide open making plays. So defensively, a couple of transfers that can rush the passer some, but they got a couple of linebackers in the 230 to 240 range that have some size, but overall not real deep and not a lot of bigger bodies for this defense. So I think you're going to see a completely different plan where they try to be a little bit more aggressive and try to get closer to the line of scrimmage. But again, if Auburn executes on both sides of the ball, this should be a game where they should have control of this one and be able to do what they need to do.
And Philip, to your earlier point, it's going to be interesting to see because you get these kinds of games over the years. I remember when they went to Cal 2 years ago, their passing game looked really bad. They come back home the next week, and I think Peyton Thorne threw it like 40 times against Samford. Right. It was almost just like a situation where you are just testing out as many things as possible. Obviously, their passing game wasn't bad last week. They just didn't have to do it very much. So I agree with what you said earlier. Like, it's going to be interesting to sort of see the balance. I would not be, and again, most of it is RPO based. So like Jason said, it's going to be depending on whatever Ball State shows defensively. But I would not be surprised if you're the coaching staff, if you're Derek Nix, if you're Hugh Freeze, if you're Ken Austin, you looked at the film this week and said, okay, what does this look like in practice? What were we trying to do here that maybe Baylor just took away? Let's just force it. Let's just see what happens this week. If you've got to throw, try to make it just to get some more stuff on tape. I feel like as you move closer to SEC play.
I think in a game like this, and they would never admit it and shouldn't, but the last thing you want to do with all these receivers they have is to come out of this game with the receivers not having gotten a lot of action. I think everybody was fine with what happened last Saturday. It was what the situation called for, and you won the game. So, yes. But I think they for a lot of reasons, I'll be very surprised if they don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I know we lost Philip there for a second. But to add to that point, Nathan, I think this is one where you can say, look, no matter what, I thought last week there were probably opportunities to throw the football that they didn't take advantage of maybe at times. I think this is one where you go in going, No matter
She's
what.
calling you.
Throw the football. Phil, you're back. You're back now.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, good.
The same thing happened as before. I don't know what's going on. It must be me.
But yeah, so I agree, Philip. I just said I think this is an opportunity to no matter what, say, look, sooner or later you're going to have to throw the football in situations, no matter if they're.
Right.
I think this is a time where you go, like, you can force the issue a little bit this week and go, look, we're going to get some of these looks. We have to be able to take advantage of it without, again, making the mistakes.
Right.
It's funny looking back on, Philip, me and Jason talked about it on our pregame show at Baylor Stadium, but it's like you take 1-0 regardless. It doesn't matter how you get a win. It was such an important game to get off to a good start for what's a really important season. And I know we have to talk and people have to talk and they have to, it's a long way between each game. It's just kind of funny. I was listening to some podcasts this week talking about, just other college football games. And when they touch on Auburn Baylor, they were like, it's interesting. We're going to see if Jackson Arnold and these receivers, if they can get it going. And it's like, it's just funny that there always has to be a flip side, right? You can run for 300 yards and at 7 yards a carry, but there's always got to be something. And to Jason's point, and Hugh Freeze said this week, they probably could have opened it up for 200, 250 passing yards. Malcolm Simmons dropped a touchdown on that pass from Jackson Arnold. And so it's just funny. It's funny you go on the road and win by 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying, and people haven't even been saying it negatively. It's just there always has to be that other element of, well, we'll see if Jackson Arnold really works out. I don't know if he's a good passer or not. That's something I heard this week. And it's like, well, I don't know how you can know that after one game. But again, just got to have something to talk about.
Well, it's, they will have to have something to talk about. A lot of them probably didn't even watch the game. They just saw that Auburn only passed for 100 and however many yards. And, I don't doubt that they could have done that. I found it very interesting what Dave Aranda said after the game, which was that they did not feel like they could play man-to-man pass coverage because the matchups did not favor them. So they basically just did what they thought they had to do and to have any chance. But also the game never got out of hand. I think, and he said this himself, I think if the game had gotten a little more separation, Auburn would have taken advantage to try to open up and work on the passing game. But I mean, every pass that goes in the air can be intercepted, and then all of a sudden you're in a real trouble. So I thought he did it. I thought they handled it exactly like they should have. They couldn't stop him from running, so they ran.
Yeah, I talked to Horatio Fields about it after practice on Tuesday. I was like, hey, what did the wide receivers think about that game? What was kind of y'all's mindset? And he said, look, we realized, he said we were having conversations on the sideline. I thought it was interesting. Hugh Freeze said this week on Tiger Talk, he was like, I'm really glad to have these tablets now, because he said around the second quarter, they showed the wide receivers and said, look, y'all can't do this right now. We're just going to keep running it. And Horatio Fields said they sort of just accepted the challenge and said, all right, we're going to go block our tails off if that's what we have to do. And then, of course, Horatio Fields comes up with one of the biggest catches of the day, because, I mean, shoot, 3rd and 9, you give it right back to Baylor. They had momentum. They tie up that game, which who knows? Who knows what happens?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's why
I was impressed with the Baylor quarterback. And I had watched him against LSU in the bowl game last year. And and when he passed for even more yards than he did against Auburn. And I was impressed with him then too. A guy like that throws the ball 48 times, he's going to end up with a good many yards. But also, if he throws it 48 times, it probably means you can't run the ball.
Yeah.
And in which case, you're probably not going to win.
Yep. Still touch a little bit more on before we shift gears to that, because I think defensively, probably more questions coming out of this one. But went back and look at Ball State, and you went, okay, look, last week, Ball State plays Purdue and gives up 340 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 20 of 29 for Purdue. And you go, okay, well, is that a microcosm of last season? The answer is yes. Purdue last year, Ball State last season gave up 37 passing touchdowns and only had 8 interceptions.
Wow.
They were fairly dreadful. Miami threw for 507. Now, that was the number 1 pick overall. But Kent State 394, Vanderbilt 275. They held Central Michigan to 192, a couple of teams. But when you look at kind of what they did last season, pass defense, and you start going, man, do you have a chance to take advantage of that? Yep. They were 130th nationally in pass defense a year ago, and they gave up 340 in week 1. So
yeah,
they may not be able to help no matter what they do on defense. So, yes, I would say that Auburn is going to have some opportunities on Saturday.
And like you said, Jason, shifting gears to defense because, like Phillip just mentioned, quarterback threw it around a bunch. We talked about it after the game, and Hugh Freeze talked about it this week. Look, it's interesting because the D-line was actually really good in a lot of areas, particularly stopping the run. And then when Baylor got into clear passing situations, 3rd and long, and they weren't just doing this dink and dunk stuff, Auburn's pass rush was also pretty good. Just a few areas here and there, particularly over the middle of the field. And then we get to practice on Tuesday, Jason, and they have how did you describe them? I mean, they got the padding on their hands.
Yeah, it's almost like oven mitts. From a baseball perspective, it's the sliding mitts that these guys wear now to protect their hands. But that all the DBs wearing those in coverage to not hold and to go cover guys. Yeah, it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, and that's going to be a group that's under the microscope this week for another reason, because you're not going to have Champ Anthony, one of your starting safeties. Now, some really good news if people didn't see it today. I asked Hugh Freeze about Champ on the teleconference, and he said procedure went really well this week, and they're going to evaluate him, and he might be back on the practice field in a couple weeks. Now, that's, you have to see how he does and everything, but they fully expect him to play in that cast. And so that kind of tracks. Maybe you have him back for the start of SEC play, or maybe like 1 or 2 games into SEC play. Regardless, he is not out for the large majority of the year, and I think that's really good for this Auburn secondary. But a couple young guys, Jason, Eric Winters and New Boy Fagans. We talked about it this week. A couple guys with differing skill sets. Winters is built like a house, and New Boy Fagans just finds his way to the football. I think you're going to see a lot of those guys on Saturday, and even separate from them, just these DBs in general. I think they know that they are probably the number 1 concern after that first game, and that they need to tighten up a little bit. So it's not just for the offense, the defense as well. These next couple games has an opportunity to iron out some wrinkles.
It's really interesting because I think if you would have asked any of us or most anyone that was at practice at any point in time this preseason, what's the one group you weren't worried about? And you would have said defensive backs.
Yep.
I probably would have said DBs would have been 1 ahead of wide receiver 2 because of the way they played in preseason. I mean, they were that good. But sometimes it's humbling is maybe necessary. They probably felt that way too. And then sometimes you gotta go, okay, we're not as good as maybe we thought we were. I thought, to Philip's point, I thought Baylor was really good in what they did offensively. That was the starting point. You had a really veteran quarterback, some veteran wide receivers, veteran offensive line group. My guess is that they're going to score a bunch of points this year. Now, they're going to have to score a bunch of points this year probably to win games. But, I mean, like they play SMU Saturday, maybe the first 1 to 40 wins. But I do think they're going to score. So it was, I think, well, if this season turns out like it could for Auburn and you win games, I think we'll look back at Saturday as probably Friday as probably a big point for this defense, because I think it probably got their attention pretty quickly to go, okay, got to get better. Thought we were good. I still think they're good. But you also have games like that where you go, I think back, Phil, like 2009 Outback Bowl against Northwestern, and that was a defense that was coming on, but it's kind of the same thing where you go, man, you play a team that just basically says we're going to throw it every down, and it almost turned well, even Baylor almost turned into a run and shoot the other night where you went, okay, Auburn got some pressure and didn't tackle well. I went back and looked today a little bit, and there were 3 plays that you think about in that game. For me, it was one of them early to Caleb Harris, over the top, kind of deep ball that didn't end up killing them. But then you have a 4th down touchdown. One was a busted assignment, but you had another 4th down where you had a guy that made a play, and then you had the short 4th down touchdown. So they brought pressure the first 3 times, and he beat them. They got beat by pressuring. The last time, they rushed 3 guys on 4th down inside the 10-yard line, and Kieran Crawford is in perfect position, and they're going to stop it. Like they had a great defensive call, and he jumps inside the blocker, and when he does, it opens up the outside, and he's able to score a touchdown. If he stays outside, there's no chance to score a touchdown, 0. So you go like execution. I think it was execution 98% of the time for Auburn's defense on Friday, and I would expect that to improve a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they got to improve on tackling. But if you watch many games last weekend, lots of people need to improve tackling, and I think that's a direct result of the way teams, not Auburn, just Auburn, practice now. They're limited in the first place by the rules about how often they can go at full contact. So I fully expect that to be better, to get better, and because I don't know how many yards they had after they should have been tackled, but it was a good many. And but also, I mean, the difference in a broken tackle and a missed tackle is which side you're on. If it's your guy that's not getting tackled, it's a broken tackle. If you're the defense, it's a missed tackle. But the receiver number 1 is that Trigg? Was Trigg? No, he is an impressive looking player. He really is.
Yeah, and Freese said at the beginning of the week, he said, look, he didn't think their scheme was good enough. What they dialed up during the week, he sort of had some regrets about how they defended Michael Trigg. And look, Baylor was a top 20 scoring team last year for a reason. I don't know how good they're going to be on the ground. They were also down a couple running backs, so it makes sense that he put it in the air 48 times. I think that's a team that could win 8 or 9 games. They're probably just going to have to outscore their opponent in every single game because I don't know if their defense is any good whatsoever. Speaking of quarterback, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
That's to say, you really don't know, and that's the thing. We think we know. You'll get a barometer when you start playing other teams, and it's kind of like around the country. It's still really hard to determine. You can go, well, they beat this team, and this team was supposed to be good. Well, but we don't know how good. And so I think there's still some of that. So, I think we'll get a little bit more barometer on other teams and Baylor as well as you start playing some more games.
Lots of overreaction. I mean,
really? No, that would never happen.
I keep seeing playoff projections with Florida State in the playoff.
Yep.
Florida State, who's won 3 of their last 13 games. But they beat Alabama. Well, how good's Alabama? Saturday they weren't very good.
Well, that's the thing. That's the part we don't know yet. We don't know how good Notre Dame is, so you don't know how good Miami is.
You don't know how good Clemson is.
Correct. We think Ohio State and Texas are probably pretty good, but again, you don't know until you see how pieces come together.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you started saying that, Jason, I was going to say, you don't think Florida State should be ranked number 5 right now?
Big win. Not quite yet. No.
You mentioned it earlier, Philip, getting the quarterbacks on the field in this game. I'm interested to see, just because Auburn has interesting backups. They've got a true freshman and got a guy who has been around the block, feels pretty comfortable. I fully believe you could put Ashton Daniels into the controls of this offense as the starter and probably put up just as many points in this game. I think it's just that kind of and he's got that kind of experience. But Deuce Knight is another sort of, I'm interested to talk to you, Freeze, about this after practice on Thursday, but a true freshman that we have heard is so far along mentally, has really absorbed the offense really well, has obviously every physical tool that you could want. And I imagine we will see him for the first time on Saturday. It'd be interesting to see what he looks like.
Obviously what you'd like is to be ahead 35-0 at the half and say, okay, we're going to put Ashton out there for in the third quarter and put Deuce out there in the fourth quarter or whatever. That's ideally that's what could happen. I think they would probably like to play them both, don't y'all?
Yeah, it just you and I were talking about this week, Jason.
Yeah, I've kind of been bouncing back and forth. I don't really know the answer to how it works in this day and age with young guys. Yeah, you want experience, but you also don't want somebody to see how good a young guy is and then come off from $4 million next year. I mean, like, it's a hard question. I think you go, hey, we trust ourselves that go, look, we've put ourselves in position to retain players, and you recruit them for a reason, and you go get some experience. I still think that's the way to go, but it is, I think, at least something you have to at least question, because everything now is feels like an audition, kind of like a free agency in the NFL, but it's permanent there. It is a 1-year thing in college football.
Oh, it's really amazing. I mean, who's the receiver at Miami that was at Liberty and LSU?
CJ Daniels.
CJ Daniels, yeah.
CJ Daniels and
third school in 3 years.
An All-American. I think it's especially true of older guys that, a guy that's been playing for 5 years might not be the most talented guy, but he might be a better player. And he made a remarkable catch, obviously, that ended up being the difference in the game.
Yeah, well, kind of my baseball analogy, an Auburn baseball assistant said, how do you get old on the mound? Because most every hitter you're facing is 22 and 23 years old. Yeah. It's the same thing in football. You look out there and you go, I don't care how talented that 18-year-old guy is, especially early. When you're facing 22 and 23-year-old guys, especially at the line of scrimmage, it has an impact.
Oh, yeah. Different. It for sure does, isn't it? Speaking of baseball, are you going to see the Savannah Bananas when they come to town?
I will be at Arkansas. And, I'm glad. I do want to mention, because people will be watching this. I've asked folks, because I went to church tonight and on Wednesday night and got hit up by, I don't know, 3 or 4 people that said, hey, you got any leads to get tickets? This is one of those situations where the Savannah Bananas, this is their show. They say, hey, we want to come to your campus, but here's the only way it happens. You go, okay, we'll do whatever we need to do to come. There's a lot of exposure involved. It'll be on their YouTube channel. They got like 5 million people on their waiting list for tickets. So if you're a premium, not just a regular season ticket holder, but a premium ticket holder like 984 Club and some of those other places, my belief is that there'll be some opportunity for those folks to buy tickets. For the general population, which is your season ticket holders, it's going to be trying to get on the lottery from the Savannah Bananas and try to get in there. But it's a opportunity that you can't pass up if you're Auburn. Right. It's not ideal. You'd like to have 100,000 seats where you can get everybody in there, but you're not doing that in the fall at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So right now, you just hopefully some folks can find some tickets to get in.
What strange times we live.
Absolutely. It is a little different. Yes.
I mean, I don't want to put it out there so that people rope it off, but the Plainsman parking deck is always an option. Might be overrun.
It might not be an option for this. Who knows? Because again, they do things differently. They may have to figure something out there too. So a little time to kind of figure it out, but there'll be some opportunities, I think, for some folks to get in. So,
before we wrap up, guys, if we want to talk about some other games and some other things on our mind in college football this week, I mean, it's been beaten like a drum already. The Florida State win over Alabama, but Jason, I just thought we were flying back from Dallas, and half of the plane was watching that game.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what felt like a vintage Auburn rushing performance out of a team in 2025. It was a lot like the old Gus Malzahn. And I wonder, I was thinking about this, knowing Gus, and you guys know much better than I do, but knowing Gus to the extent that we do, And knowing, that he wanted to make this step down to be an assistant, wonder how much, I hesitate to say easier, but going from being a head coach for so long back to being an OC, especially in today's world where if you're a head coach, you got so much to deal with. Just wonder how good of a fit that is maybe for him at this stage of his career, to be an OC at a place like Florida State where you're going to have pretty good talent.
I think it's a great fit. And I read what he told Brandon.
Yeah, I agree.
Philip
froze up on his skin, but no, Gus is a guy that it's football. He's all about football, and at some level, there was always maybe a little uncomfortability being a head coach because there's so many other things involved, and now you get back to just being a football coach.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on here.
No, I just say I think there's some uncomfortability over the years for Gus being the head coach because of everything involved. Philip, now he gets back to being what he is, which is the high school coach drawing up plays.
Yep, exactly. And I've had a lot of other coaches tell me, Gus's passing game has been criticized a lot as too simple, too elementary, and maybe that's true. But I've had coaches tell me, said nobody coaches the running game better than he does. It has a better running scheme than he does. And that's the thing about Gus. I mean, people think about it, they think he's just drop back and sling it every play, and he isn't and never has been. He likes to run the ball. And when he's got a quarterback that can run it like that guy did, Castellanos did against Alabama, then he's going to be hard to stop. And it looked very familiar to me. I didn't see him doing anything different than he's always done. And but that whole game was just bizarre to me. It's hard to figure out Alabama, and I don't want to say, well, they're just not any good and they can't get better. I'm sure they will get better, but
they don't have enough money. They don't have enough money in there to pay players, though. That's what it is. Even though they have the best roster in college football, according to their recruiting rankings.
Talent composite. It's 3 or 4 straight years they've had the most talented roster.
Yeah. So,
but what happens? I mean, Brian Davis didn't play like one of the best receivers in the country, and to be honest, hasn't since about the halfway point of last season. And quarterback really didn't have much of a chance, and they couldn't run the ball. And their offensive line maybe surprised me the most of all, that their offensive line got pushed around like it did. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, no, it was a surprise. The fact that it wasn't anything really out of the ordinary from Gus Malzahn offense we saw in 2010, 2013. That was the surprising part, that Alabama looked lost on something that they should have seen a bunch of, to be quite honest. But hey, Florida State did a good job. They were physical. Now can they come back to earth and execute in some of the games coming up for them? Until they're not a ton of those big ones left for them. They got a couple opportunities, but yeah, that one, Nathan, for me. And then the other games, again, it wasn't a surprise that LSU won at Clemson. Wasn't a surprise that Miami beat Notre Dame. Thought both looked physical and fast, and so that was probably the ones that jumped out to me the most.
The Clemson quarterback, I read this today, I think in 4 games against SEC teams, he has no touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. No offense to him, but I've never seen him as this Heisman Trophy kind of guy he's been built up to be during the offseason. I mean, he's a good quarterback. But, Clemson goes from being 8-4 last year and not really being anything special at all to being ranked number 4 in the country going into the season. I found that a little bizarre too, to be honest with you. But polls, who knows? Different people view it different ways. Different voters view it different ways. So, but with you, I don't think I don't think we know everything there is to know. I know we don't about anybody. Not Ohio State, not anybody. And Notre Dame, this is going to be interesting to me, and I mentioned this in my coffee with Phillip this morning, is that Notre Dame, they play Texas A&M not this week but the next, and that's the last ranked team they play.
That's it.
And they might not be able to afford another loss and still get in the playoff. I'm guilty of doing what I've grown very weary of people doing, speculating about the playoff when it's barely September. But their quarterback, redshirt freshman quarterback, looks like he's going to be a real player. And and there are certain teams that people want to assume are good. I mean, how long has Miami been in the ACC? Now,
A long time, and
they haven't won a thing.
Still waiting, yes.
And so maybe they're great, and but we're going to have to see.
Yep, and a lot weaker slate of games this weekend. Really, the only one I'm keeping my eye on Saturday is Michigan and Oklahoma, just because we can learn a little bit more about Oklahoma before Auburn has to play. It should be an interesting one.
It should be. We don't know how good either one of those teams is either. And
nope.
The one I'm looking for. Did either one of y'all watch South Florida and Boise State? That was a beatdown. That was a beatdown. I'd be a little nervous if I was Florida.
Yeah, really athletic quarterback, South Florida. I mean, that's going to be the story of that game is watching those two guys make plays. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting game. I think there's a couple that are interesting. That John Mateer, new system, Michigan defense, which is still pretty good. True freshman going on the road, second start, first time on the road at a place like Oklahoma. There are a lot of storylines for that game.
Yeah, not as many as there will be in
not a couple weeks, especially if they win.
Yeah. When Jackson Arnold goes home. Kansas, Missouri could be an interesting game too. Kansas looked pretty good last Saturday, and Missouri did too. It's hard. I don't care how bad you beat somebody that is overmatched. I mean, that doesn't show me anything one way or the other, really. I mean, Georgia looked pretty good against Marshall. Missouri scored 61 points against whoever it was they played. But that doesn't tell you anything, really. It doesn't tell me. It tells me they're a lot better than that team. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've got people were talking on the message board about there was a thread a few days ago. It's like, the team Auburn really needs to be worried about is Arkansas because Petrino's still got it rolling. And it's like, they played Alabama A&M, and Auburn looked like the greatest passing offense in the history of the planet last year against Alabama A&M. So definitely need some more data. But, week one to me is this special 6-day period. It's almost even better than the preseason speculation because you don't just get to speculate, you get to overreact. You get to look at 60 minutes of data and just act like it's the end all be all. So it's wonderful. But we're going to get some more data on this Auburn team on Saturday. Probably get to see a bunch of guys on both sides of the ball, get to see a lot of different names into the game. Or Ball State might have some tricks up its sleeve and keep this one competitive for a little while. But at this current moment, Auburn is a 42.5 point favorite. So plenty healthy. 6:30 p.m. on ESPNU inside of Jordan-Hare Stadium. Everybody will get to see that new North End Zone video board for the first time, and should be a fun night game. So we appreciate everybody for joining us tonight on the Roundtable, I guess this morning, whenever you end up listening to it. For Jason Caldwell and Phillip Marshall, I am Nathan King. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.